Good morning. Today I'm going to be talking about group consciousness. It's one of my passions, and probably one of the most difficult ways to live one's life is through the consciousness of a group. But it is the way to surpass our personality life. Even it improves our family life as we begin to understand what group consciousness really is. If you're not part of a group that has formulated a unified consciousness, some of what I'm saying today may be a surprise or confusing, but your heart's going to know it. It's going to resonate in your heart. So listen to your heart. So here's a definition of group consciousness. This is from Master Moria in the book Illumination. He writes, ask a composer if he likes unison choirs and symphonies. He will pronounce your question an absurdity, because there is no such thing as a symphony in unison. For a new tone, the composer is ready to introduce the most unexpected instrument. Just so in the formation of a group, be not astonished at an apparent diversity of its members. Not according to birth, nor habits, nor mistakes are they grouped. Their contact is spirit. Their contact is in spirit. They are united in a chorus by spirit, which is imponderable, invisible, and inaudible. Therefore, do not reproach anyone for the pitch of his voice. Its quality is what's important. Many appreciate this particular exclamation of a group formation, as it specifically addresses how a group united in spirit is also comprised of the diversity of its members. So if you don't take anything else away from this morning's talk, think about this. There's such a misunderstanding in the spiritual community today of what a unified group means. They do think, mistakenly so, that a unified group is a group of one voice. How can that be when we are so different in our personality life, in our family life, maybe, our language life? We come from so many different venues to a point of being part of a family. Think of what it's like to have a blended family. There is no such thing as one voice in a blended family. There may be a loud voice in a blended family, but unified, no. So diversification is really vital to a united consciousness. And you're going to hear more about this during the talk this morning. So group consciousness is the totality of the consciousness of the group. Group consciousness is the totality of the consciousness of the group. An individual has their own mental sphere. You have your own mental sphere. I have my own mental sphere. And what's called the light that's within your mental sphere. But also a group is exactly the same. The group has a lighted consciousness, and that lighted consciousness is made of the light of every single member in the group. Group consciousness. Now, there are different stages of group consciousness. For example, we can think of the lowest manifestation of group consciousness, which would be animals and birds and insects, by which they act and react as a group. Just watch a group of ants together, or a flock of birds. They act and react. They move together. They move separately. It's very interesting. And being a dog lover myself, I had 4 dogs at one time, which was quite an experience in itself. And it just tickled me to see 2 of them were from the same litter, and how different they were. And they'd play together, they'd argue together, they would eat together, but they had their own little personalities. Even though they looked the same, they had their own little personalities. It's so cute. Now, on the human level, we have a kind of consciousness called the mob consciousness or crowd consciousness, in which the crowd follows a certain path inspired by the collective consciousness. So when we see, for example, in this country today, we see a political collective consciousness. Watch it when you say, how can they think this way? How can they believe these things? It's called the collective human consciousness. There's also what's called the gang consciousness. Party, racial, national group consciousness, which is part of the human level of consciousness. But I'm not going to talk about those stages. It would be very boring. So all of these stages of group consciousness are leading us to a higher group consciousness. And this is my focus today, higher group consciousness. Here's one particular stage. When a person joins a group dedicated to a lofty plan or goal, it's at this stage that group consciousness is the ability to think of, now listen to this, it's very, very important, that at this stage, group consciousness is the ability to think about group members as if they were you. To think about group members as if they were you, and relate to them as they are more important than yourself. In group consciousness, we subordinate our interests to the interests of group members. This is not necessarily so easily done when you think about coming from different cultures, right? Coming from, I was raised differently than you were raised. You were raised differently than I was raised. So it's not easy. But the way it works for me is that as a musician, played in professional symphonies for many, many years, every single individual in that symphony was different from the person sitting next to them. But they had to listen to the person that was sitting next to them. They had to listen to the drum. They had to listen to the flute. They had to listen to the oboe in order to blend themselves, whatever instrument they were playing, with the whole of the orchestra, and still keep their own individuality. And that's really important. So in group consciousness, think of the symphony orchestra, we subordinate our interest to the interest of the group members. We highly respect them and strive to create opportunities to serve and uplift them. And I think about the first time I played in a as a professional in the symphony. I was very young. I was like, I think it must have been 22 at the time. And how beautiful the other members of the violin section were with me. They helped me practice. They helped me gain confidence. You know, they set themselves aside. They didn't come to me and say, now play like I play. They didn't say, be like me. Said, what can we do to help you be comfortable in this first experience as a professional? And that's group consciousness. A group conscious member is very sensitive to the needs of others, and they sincerely try to meet those needs until that person is able to stand on their own feet. Until they are able to stand on their own feet. Like when I was playing the violin. Finally, they dropped away. I didn't need their help any longer. I grew up. During times of sickness, tribulation, and sorrow, a group conscious person stands as a tower of courage, love, and inspiration, unaffected by their personal involvement. Now the next stage, of course, is a higher stage of group consciousness, and it belongs to those who function on the higher mental plane. So we have the lower mental plane, which is the plane where the more advanced, we could call it a more advanced stage of human consciousness. That's the lower mental plane. This is where thinkers in their mind reside. But I'm talking about the next plane of consciousness, the higher mental plane, and also the subjective and objective worlds. This is the next stage of group consciousness. So group consciousness refers to the involvement with the life of the group. Involvement with the life of the group, the plan, the purpose, achieved through three things: for self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. So these are things we work on as a group, we practice as a group. Self-forgetfulness, again, is not easy. I remember when my first spiritual teacher sat me down, this was a beautiful young woman, and she said, you must build an ego. I didn't know what ego was. And I thought, well, it sounds like something I really would like to have. I would like to build an ego. Now I listen to a song written by my teacher, Torkim Saradarian, and he says, throw your ego into the ocean. So what I learned from that is first you must have an ego. And once you have an ego, then you must change that ego, transform that ego, so it no longer creates limitations in your creative life, in your personality life, in your group life, in your bright relationships. We have to be self-forgetful. And in being self-forgetful, we must practice harmlessness. Harmlessness is one of the main virtues of all the virtues that we practice. Harmlessness is a really key virtue to practice. And then our entire life is built around learning right speech, right communication, right human relations. Now, it's in this stage, those group members who seek their personal interests or use the group members or the group for their personal goals, or engage themselves in criticism and hatred and gossip and malice and slander, are proving that they are not yet able to develop group consciousness. They're still building that ego. Other signs of lack of group consciousness is the inability to serve and the inability to help the group with dedication and devotion and intelligence. Then we have higher group, higher group, and that develops gradually. It's not something that we just walk into a group and become a group of higher consciousness. It takes many incarnations to build such a group. But the beginning stages of development start with the sense of responsibility. So, for example, going back to my, example of being in a symphony orchestra, we each had a responsibility to be the best musician that we could possibly be. And that meant no matter how accomplished of a musician we were, we still had to practice. So that's where our sense of responsibility was. It was also obviously practicing, learning the music, learning about the composer, learning about what the composer was doing when he or she was composing that music. What inspired that music. So the same with the kind of group that we have here, we had to and have to develop a sense of responsibility. The sense of responsibility will make us feel that we must be careful of what we do and what we say and what we think so that we don't hurt anyone in the world, not just in the group. See, the group is it's a training ground. It's a training for disciples to go out into the world. So we are in it when we're part of the consciousness of a group, a true group. That means that we're taking ourselves not just into this life of service, but our next life and next life until we will become the head of state, or we will become the head of a corporation, or the head of this or that in our leadership to bring people together for evolution and beauty and goodness and righteousness and joy and freedom. Right human relations. The sense of responsibility gradually leads us to right human relations. No more divorces. I don't know why it is, but falling in love is the most difficult experience to sustain there is in the world. So marriage provides us with a training ground. How to be selfless, how to be harmless, how to practice right speech, and so forth. Right human relations. Inclusive thinking. Thinking for the common good, not for my good, but mine and your, the common good. And actions based on goodwill. After we live in this state of consciousness, we then become a magnet to those who are on the same path of group discovery. And through them, they expand the horizon of their inclusiveness and lay the foundation for true group consciousness, which means we begin to magnetically draw like-minded people. Those pure in heart or developing purity in heart and mind are looking for such a group. So it was for this reason that I like to talk at times about the Agni Yoga Society. I remember when we're going to go over today. I hope you online are going to have time to listen to us. If not, this lecture is going on YouTube later on today. But the Agni Yoga Society, when I first began studying Agni Yoga, I just studied the letters of Agni Yoga and the 14 books of Agni Yoga. Didn't really understand it all. I understood parts of it. I was particularly drawn to the book Heart. Uh, but I said before I was going to make a commitment to this path, I wanted to know about the founders. I wanted to learn about them, and especially Helena Rourke. I wanted to know more about her marriage. I wanted to know how she could have developed such a huge organization and be a mom at the same time. I wasn't going to make a commitment to a path unless I knew the founders. And so I made a commitment to do that. And that commitment is still in the process of unfolding through reading about her letters, reading about her relationship. When I say reading about her letters, it was the content of her letters where she talked about her relationship with the master. Then I learned about her relationship with her husband. Then I learned about how her children were part of the original group, that inner circle, as well as maybe 7 or 8 others that ultimately became part of the inner circle. And all that they went through together, it was like they were all individual musicians that were learning how to play together and to create this magnificent performance based on a purpose and based on a plan. And to see how they all worked together, how they fought together, how a couple of them betrayed, the plan, betrayed the purpose. It's like you could see they exemplified society at one level, but also society of what we could become, that higher mental plane, that higher level, higher stages of group consciousness. You have to work on it. It doesn't just give birth to itself. We have to work on it. Groups that are dedicated to the teaching of the great ones are challenged to develop group consciousness, and they indeed were. And what better leaders to have than a master? It's like, how can you go wrong when a master is leading you? Well, when I think about the first time that I met my teacher, what it did to me, and that was still a human being, a great human being, but nonetheless a human being. Imagine now to take that beautiful human being 10 times more enlightened and standing in front of a master who sees everything inside and outside about who you are. That's the kind of light, the kind of electricity, the kind of fire that this inner circle grew up in and were shaped and molded by, shaped and molded by. So over 100 years later, we still have the books. We still have their stories. We still have their experiences. We still have the banner of peace, which is that symbol back there, if you're not familiar with it. They created something substantial. Such a group also has a mental body. It is composed of the bodies, allergies. The mental body is composed of the mental bodies of the group members. The mental body of the group is built upon the mental bodies of the group members who gradually converge in the same frequency and form a unified field of electromagnetic energy. Now, the same frequency, again, this is so important to understand, going back to the idea of a symphony orchestra. When a symphony orchestra plays the composition of a great composer, they're on the same frequency, which is the same keynote that whole symphony composition was composed on. or usually a chord, a triad of 3 notes, and a scale of 7 notes. But it's the same frequency. There's no discord. Same frequency. And even if there's a discord or what's called disharmony, that disharmony blends with the whole of the piece of music. So that's what the same frequency means, which means purpose and plan. That the orchestra has a purpose, has a plan. The group consciousness has a purpose, has a plan. Or in other words, the same frequency that has been built and constructed from the substance of the higher mental plane. When this energy field of mental substance is constructed, the inner presence of the group, the souls of the group, project their intelligent light upon this sphere. So you can just imagine that we're projecting the light in our mental body onto the sphere, the mental sphere of the entire group. We're each of us projecting our light into the mental sphere of the group. And we create a lighted area of extreme sensitivity. So you can't just go into a room where there's a group of people and say they're a group. They can be of a hurting level of consciousness. They can be that mob consciousness, but not a group that we're trying to define here. Now we have an accepted disciple. An accepted disciple, this would be disciples now, we're using terminology which is a little bit different than what you may be used to. This is not a Christian word that I'm talking about. A disciple is a being, a light being of beauty and goodness and righteousness and joy and freedom. That is the description of what it means to be a disciple. And there are different stages, different degrees of expression of the disciple in their light. To be an accepted disciple means that you're at the center of this lighted area that eventually an accepted disciple or initiate locates themselves. So that would be like in the Agni Yoga Society, they had that inner circle that was made of a disciple that was accepted in the master's heart, in the heart of the master. This forms the leadership of the group. So we have in our publication called Agni Yoga Quarterly, for many, many, many years, we have included articles that were written by the leadership, that original leadership of the Agni Yoga Society, which has made it into what it is today. This unified field of lighted area acts as a group conscious mechanism. This lighted area in the mental body serves as a lighted mechanism. And we say that those who have lent their light to the light of the sphere of the higher mind have created a unified field. So I was just recently reading a quote in one of the Agni Yoga books talking about how a group must have 2 sections. One section, those that are coming in, and the other group would be the leadership group that has created this unified field of group consciousness. Those who have dedicated themselves to the plan and purpose of the group. But we must have this other group that still may be a little bit chaotic, still has their stuff to work out, but they're so drawn into the mechanism of a lighted group consciousness that it's just like, it's like going back to, as a musician, my musical life. You know, when I was a little kid, my parents had to deal with me playing the violin. And if you've ever been around a little kid playing, it is not pleasant. Believe me, it is not pleasant. So they had to grow up with me as I was growing into and becoming a mature violinist, mature musician. So that lighted, unified group must have another section, see, where the newcomers are coming in. So I think that's enough so you understand that we don't turn away someone who wants to be part of a group consciousness, who wants to be part of the teaching. Telepathy. The sphere of group consciousness eventually becomes so organized that the group members telepathically share each other's aspirations, insights, visions, and joys. If this continues for a long time, they will even attract greater waves of wisdom from hierarchical sources. Then we have a subjective guide. The group consciousness will attract attention of the subjective guide of the group. This subjective guide comes closer and closer and begins to inspire the group to greater service, greater sacrifice for humanity. Now, when I think about, this statement, it tells me that groups grow together from one life to the next to the next. And as that group develops the lighted sphere in the mental plane, once that unified group of consciousness is built, that's when the master or the guide draws, or is magnetically drawn to such a group to be the hands and feet of the hierarchy. So it doesn't happen in just one lifetime. It builds over a series of this life and the next life and the next life. So as the subjective guide anchors itself in the electromagnetic sphere of the group consciousness, the members of the group feel closer and closer to each other until a spiritual family comes into being. As members of the spiritual family share each other's karma, and because of their spiritual striving, each one helps the other to pay their karma. Very powerful statement. Eventually the karma is paid and the whole group is set free for real hierarchical work. When you read about the life of each individual that formed the inner circle of the Agni Yoga Society, you can see what I'm saying in full action. It's at this stage that the great ones can come in contact with such a group and initiate them through the stages of discipleship until the group becomes a sun in the heart of the master. The greatest reward of a group is when the members are able to serve the hierarchy in their cosmic vision. Such groups obviously are very rare, and we are told that the great ones are trying their utmost to create such a group. Now, there are obstacles to group consciousness. The first obstacle is, and listen to this carefully because we fall into this category, not just this group here, but I'm in contact with so many groups around the world, the spiritual community, the Agni Yoga spiritual community, that I've gotten to know these groups and our group as, we all have the same issues. So here's the obstacles. The tendency of the group members to create relations with each other based on personality interests is a huge obstacle to the consciousness of a united group, not only on a personal level, but even bringing one's business into the group. Like, I'm an insurance agent. You need to become, a paid member and pay your premiums in the insurance that I sell. We can't do that. You can't bring business because that's not part of the purpose of the plan of a united group consciousness. So, bringing personality interests into the group is a huge obstacle. Unless these relationships are based on a spiritual vision and a striving towards sacrificial service for humanity, they will create complications in a polluted atmosphere where the germs of criticism and dislike, partisan spirit, greed, and materialism grow in such abundance that the flame of the spirit dies. And this is why it takes so many lifetimes to bring a group, shape a group into a beautiful musical symphony. Another obstacle is when some group members do not engage in their duties and obligations and responsibilities. For example, they don't follow the rule of unanimous and simultaneous meditation and study and labor, and they miss various service activities. Such an attitude makes the group membership lukewarm and increases the karma of those who are striving hard to meet all of their inner presence requests. Now I'm going to speed up what I have to say so you don't have to listen to any longer than an hour. The group karma increases when some of the members keep their membership but dedicate themselves to various interests that do not agree with the aspiration, vision, and dedication of the group. This is so important. I want to read it again. The group karma increases when some of the members keep their membership but dedicate themselves to various interests that do not agree with the aspiration, with the vision, and dedication of the group. And then Master Moria says in Leaves of Moria's Garden 2, it is joyous to realize that quality can always be improved if there is a discipline of spirit. Group consciousness cannot come into existence when a member physically, subjectively, or spiritually remains detached from the group, yet attaches to it for different personality interests or merely out of a formality. It is only your spiritual frequency which you are radiating out through your meditation, studies, and group labor that creates a unification. A group that does not strive for spiritual achievement as a whole slowly disintegrates. In the book Agni Yoga, paragraph or verse 134, it says, how does our community so easily avoid irritation? Do not overestimate the role of the quality of consciousness, for it is the fullness of labor that is at its foundation. In labor and in the utilization of prana lies the mystery of group harmony. Such cooperation is possible, and our followers must not be confused by the diverse characters of their co-workers. Remember the symphony orchestra? Right, okay. Our followers must not be confused by the diverse characters of their co-workers. Hard work and the proper use of nature will provide the correct attitude for the laboring community. So when I think about laboring community, it's like going back to being a musician in a symphony orchestra, laboring in such a way, perfecting ourselves as an individual in such a way that it brings us closer together harmoniously as a symphony orchestra. There's so much, I'd love to share about this, but I can't. There's no time. But I'm trying to plant some ideas to understand what it means by laboring for the community. So it's like we have, as an example, in this group, we have a publication that's called Agni Yoga Quarterly. And there's actually just a handful of people that published this absolutely amazing and fantastic publication. There's editing that goes on, there's proofreading that goes on, trying to find the content, the right content that will meet the needs of the time, and then having everything put together, reproofed, re-edited, then taken to the printer and making sure that we pick it up on time and mailing it out on time, getting it up on the internet, on the website, and then notifying other websites and other Agni Yoga communities that the publication is now ready. We're all volunteers. All 5 of us or 6 of us are volunteers. That's laboring for the community. It's not for ourselves. It's for the world. Another obstacle occurs when group members, because of their personality interests, turn the group into a social group where members lose their vision for sacrificial service and fail to enter the path of discipline, a path that leads to spiritual realization. So I talked a bit yesterday. Yesterday was our anniversary, our 43rd anniversary. And I talked about Agni Yoga and that the first 2 books that I read, The Leaves of Agni Yoga, or The Call of Agni Yoga and Illumination, I decided to make a list of disciplines. And when I came to the end of the Illumination, the second book, I finally stopped. I had so many pages of disciplines. So we have enough to keep us busy practicing disciplines like our thoughts, purifying our thoughts, taking control of our thoughts, developing right speech, developing right human relations, so we no longer have multiple marriages, in our resume. When we make that transition and our resume is looked at, and how many marriages did you have? 1, 2? Some people have been married 5 times. 5 times. My hairdresser was married 5 times. Imagine. Anyway, okay. So I really think I'm going to end here. Yeah, I've got way too much. So we'll save it for another time. But hopefully you have an idea now of what, the different stages of group consciousness and developing what it really means to have a unified group and paying one another's karma and telepathy. There's a lot to experience.